Commander Veltar watched the battle through the viewing screen of his flagship. The enemy ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons firing in steady, measured bursts. His own fleet responded with equal discipline. Each shot was calculated. Each movement was planned. This was war as Veltar knew it. He had fought in dozens of conflicts across 200 years. Every battle followed the same rules. Ships would meet in designated combat zones. They would exchange fire for hours or sometimes days. When losses reached acceptable levels, one side would retreat. The other would claim victory. It was civilized. It was proper. It was how advanced species conducted warfare. Status report, Veltar said to his communications officer. Enemy fleet is maintaining standard attack pattern, came the reply. Our casualties are within normal parameters. Theirs appear to be as well, Veltar nodded. The Hegemony Empire forces were good opponents. They understood the rules of engagement, just as well as the coalition did. Neither side wanted to cause unnecessary destruction. Both sides valued their soldiers' lives. This particular war had been going on for 15 years now. It was a dispute over mining rights in 3-star systems, important enough to fight over, but not worth destroying entire civilizations. The casualties on both sides numbered in the thousands, not millions. That was how civilized beings waged war. Sir, his aide approached. The new human liaison officer is requesting permission to observe from the bridge. Veltar's tail twitched with mild annoyance. Humans, the newest species to join the galactic community. They had been discovered only 5 years ago on a small planet called Earth. Primitive creatures who had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. The coalition had accepted them as junior members out of courtesy. Most species went through this process. Join the community, learn from their betters, eventually contribute something useful. It usually took centuries. Send him in, Veltar said. The human entered the bridge with quick, sharp movements. His name was Captain Juan, and he looked young even by human standards. Most humans lived only 70 or 80 years, making them children compared to long-lived species like Veltar's people. Commander, Juan said, offering what humans called a salute. Thank you for allowing me to observe. Of course, Captain. This will be good experience for your species. Watch and learn how proper warfare is conducted. Juan nodded and moved to stand beside the tactical display. He said nothing for the next hour, just watched as the two fleets exchanged fire. His eyes moved constantly, tracking ship movements and weapon patterns. Fascinating, Juan finally said. Your first real space battle? Veltar asked. Yes, sir. Very different from what I expected. How so? Juan hesitated. Well, sir, both fleets seem to be holding back, like you're not really trying to destroy each other. Veltar's crest rose slightly. Captain, we are engaged in honorable combat. We follow the laws of war. We do not engage in senseless slaughter. Of course not, sir. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. But there was something in the human's tone that bothered Veltar. A hint of confusion, perhaps even amusement. The battle continued for 3 more hours. When the hegemony forces finally retreated, both sides had lost exactly 12 ships each. It was a draw, which meant they would likely fight again in a few weeks. Standard victory, Veltar announced to his crew. They would file their reports, repair their ships, and prepare for the next engagement. As the bridge crew began their post-battle procedures, Veltar noticed Juan still staring at the tactical display. The human was making notes on a small device. Something interesting, Captain? Just recording observations for my reports, sir. My government is very interested in how galactic warfare works. And what will you tell them? Juan looked up. That it's very different from human warfare, sir, very controlled. Controlled is the correct word. We are not animals, Captain. We do not fight like beasts, no, sir. You certainly don't. Something in that response made Veltar uncomfortable, though he couldn't say why. Later that evening, Veltar found himself in the ship's library researching humanity. He told himself it was just curiosity about the new species. The information available was limited, mostly basic biological and cultural data collected during first contact. Humans were mammals from a planet with unusually harsh conditions. They had evolved as hunters, though they had developed agriculture and technology remarkably quickly. Their history was filled with conflicts, both small and large. One file caught his attention. It was titled Human Military History and marked as incomplete. The summary mentioned something called total war, but provided no details. When Veltar tried to access more information, he found that the human government had classified most of their military records. Strange. Most species were eager to share their warrior traditions when joining the galactic community. It was a source of pride. The next morning brought news that changed everything. A coalition colony world had been attacked. Not a military target, but a civilian planet with 2 million inhabitants. The hegemony had broken every rule of civilized warfare. The emergency council meeting was chaos. Admirals and generals from a dozen species argued about proper response protocols. Some wanted to file formal protests. Others suggested economic sanctions. Veltar watched it all with growing frustration. The enemy had attacked innocent civilians, and his colleagues were talking about paperwork. Then Captain Juan spoke. "With respect," the human said, "I think you're all missing the point." The room fell silent. A junior officer from a primitive species had just interrupted a council of war. "Explain yourself." "Captain," Admiral Crichton said coldly, "they attacked your civilians because they knew you would respond exactly like this. While you debate proper procedures, they're probably planning their next attack." "We follow the laws of war," Crichton replied. "Unlike some species, we do not descend into barbarism." Juan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Of course, sir. But barbarism only works if one side practices it. When both sides follow the rules, you get controlled conflict. When one side breaks the rules—" He didn't finish the sentence. "What would your people do?" Veltar found himself asking. Juan looked directly at him. "We would make sure they regretted it, sir. Permanently." The meeting continued for hours, but Veltar barely listened. He kept thinking about the human's words and the classified files he couldn't access. That night he dreamed of Earth. In his dream, he saw humans fighting each other with weapons that turned cities to ash. He saw them continuing to fight even when their cause seemed hopeless. He saw them refuse to surrender even when surrender would save lives. He woke up wondering if the coalition had made a terrible mistake in welcoming humanity, or if they had found exactly what they needed. The War Council chamber was packed with the most senior military minds in the coalition. Admiral Crichton stood at the center of the room, his forearms gesturing at the tactical display showing the destroyed colony world. "The attack on Carrion Prime was unprecedented," Crichton said. 2 million civilian casualties. The hegemony has violated every convention of civilized warfare. Veltar listened to the familiar arguments. Formal protests, economic sanctions, perhaps a limited military response against military targets only. The same discussions they always had, just with higher stakes. Then the human delegation entered. Captain Juan led the group, followed by a woman in civilian clothes and an older human male with more decorations on his uniform than Veltar had ever seen. The woman carried a data pad and looked around the room with sharp, calculating eyes. "Admiral," Juan said, "may I present Dr. Minji, our xenobiological warfare specialist, and General Do-Yun, Human Military Strategic Command, xenobiological warfare specialist." Veltar had never heard that title before. "General," Crichton nodded stiffly, "we appreciate human concern for our tragedy, but this is a coalition military matter." General Do-Yun stepped forward. He was shorter than most aliens in the room, but carried himself with quiet confidence. "Admiral, with respect, when civilians become targets, it becomes everyone's problem." "The hegemony has made their choice," Dr. Minji added, consulting her datapad. "Based on our analysis of their recent actions and psychological profiles, they are testing coalition resolve. This attack was not random." "Analysis?" Admiral Crichton's translator struggled with the human's accent. "What analysis?" General Do-Hyun nodded to Captain Juan, who activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the table, maps, charts, and what looked like battle recordings. "We have studied the hegemony's military structure for the past 2 years," Juan said. "Their leadership believes coalition forces are weak because you fight by rules they consider limitations." The room erupted in angry voices. Several species, representatives stood up shouting about human arrogance and inexperience. General Do-Hyun waited for quiet. "They are testing whether you will break your own rules when faced with atrocity. If you respond with formal protests, they will escalate. If you respond with limited military action, They will attack more civilians. What do you suggest? Veltar found himself asking. The general looked directly at him. Make them afraid to attack civilians ever again. And how exactly would we do that? Admiral Crixon demanded. Dr. Minji touched her datapad, and new images appeared. Detailed biological scans of hegemony species, psychological profiles, and tactical assessments. The hegemony leadership comes from a warrior culture that respects only strength, she said. They view mercy as weakness and rules as limitations. To stop them, you must speak their language, which is overwhelming force applied precisely where it hurts most. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Finally, Admiral Crixon spoke. Are you suggesting we abandon our principles? Become like them? General Do-Yun shook his head. No, Admiral. I am suggesting you win this war before more civilians die. This is barbarism, declared General Vexti of the Crystalline Assembly. We do not fight like animals. With respect, General Do-Hyun said quietly. Animals fight for territory and resources. The hegemony killed 2 million beings to make a point. That is not animal behavior. That is something much worse. Veltar studied the human general. There was something in his eyes that reminded Veltar of predators from his home world. Patient, intelligent, and absolutely certain of their ability to kill. What exactly are you proposing? Veltar asked. Captain Huan stepped forward. Give us operational freedom to respond to the civilian attack. Let us show the hegemony what happens when someone breaks the rules. Operational freedom? Admiral Crixon looked confused. Take off the leash, General Do-Hyun explained. Let us fight the way humans fight. Dr. Minji consulted her datapad again. Based on our research, a single decisive action against hegemony military leadership will prevent further civilian casualties. They understand strength. Show them strength. And if we refuse? Admiral Crixon asked. Then they will kill more civilians until you surrender or break your own rules anyway, General Do-Yun said simply. The only question is how many die first. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Species after species argued about honor, tradition, and proper conduct. The humans sat quietly, occasionally answering questions, but mostly just waiting. Finally, Admiral Crixon called for a vote. The question before us is whether to grant human forces limited operational freedom in response to hegemony atrocities. The vote was close. Many species voted against, calling the proposal reckless and dangerous. Others worried about setting precedents. But enough voted in favor, swayed by the images of the destroyed colony world. Motion passed, Admiral Crixon announced. Human forces are granted limited operational freedom, subject to review. General Do-Yun nodded once. Thank you, Admiral. We will not disappoint you. As the council dispersed, Veltar approached the human delegation. General, may I ask what you meant by the way humans fight? Dr. Minji looked up from her datapad. Commander, have you ever studied human military history? I tried to. Most of your records are classified. For good reason, General Do-Hyun said. But you are about to see a demonstration. What kind of demonstration? Captain Huan smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. The kind that makes people think twice before killing civilians. That night, Veltar couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the humans' confidence, their calm certainty that they could solve a problem the coalition had struggled with for 15 years. He accessed his personal files and tried again to research human warfare. This time, he found a few declassified documents. What he read made his blood cold. Humans had fought a global war that killed 50 million of their own species. Then, 25 years later, they had fought another global war that killed twice as many. They had developed weapons capable of destroying entire cities in single explosions, and that was just in 1 century of their history. Veltar realized that the coalition might have made a terrible mistake, not in accepting humanity, but in assuming they understood what humanity was capable of. The next morning brought news that changed everything. 12 hegemony installations had been destroyed simultaneously, not damaged, not disabled, completely destroyed. It had happened in less than an hour. Admiral Crixon called an emergency meeting. When the human delegation arrived, General Do-hyun looked exactly the same as he had the day before. Calm, patient, and deadly certain. "General," Admiral Crixon said slowly, "we granted you operational freedom yesterday. Your forces moved very quickly." "Yes, sir, we had been planning contingencies." "Planning contingencies?" "Since we joined the coalition, Commander. We always plan contingencies." Veltar stared at the human general. "You had plans ready to destroy 12 installations simultaneously?" "We had plans ready for many scenarios, Commander. This was a relatively simple one." Dr. Minji looked up from her datapad. "The hegemony leadership has requested immediate ceasefire negotiations. They wish to discuss terms for ending hostilities." "In one day?" Admiral Crixon's voice was barely audible. "Strength is the only language they understand," General Do-hyun repeated. "Now they understand." Veltar left the meeting with his worldview fundamentally shaken. Humanity had accomplished in one day what the coalition couldn't do in 15 years. And they had been planning it all along. The ceasefire lasted exactly 3 days. Veltar stood in the communication center of Coalition Command, watching incoming reports from across the front lines. The hegemony had used the ceasefire to reposition their forces and launch simultaneous attacks on 5 coalition worlds. But these weren't military targets, these were civilian colonies, research stations, and trade hubs. The hegemony had decided that if humans could break the rules of war, so could they. "Casualty reports coming in," the communications officer announced. "Initial estimates suggest over 500,000 civilian deaths across all targets." Admiral Crixon paced behind the command consoles, his forearms moving in agitated patterns. "They used our mercy against us. While we honored the ceasefire, they prepared for massacre." The emergency council meeting that followed was unlike anything Veltar had ever witnessed. Senior officers from dozens of species shouted at each other in languages the translators couldn't keep up with. Fear filled the room. The hegemony had shown they would kill any number of civilians to win. Then General Do-hyun entered with Captain Hwan and Dr. Minji. The room fell silent. "General," Admiral Crixon said, his voice tight with strain, "the hegemony has escalated beyond anything we have seen before. They are targeting civilians on a massive scale." "Yes, Admiral. We monitored the attacks in real time." "What do you recommend?" General Do-hyun looked around the room at the assembled officers. "Do you want to end this war, or do you want to continue playing by rules that only one side follows?" "Explain." "Give us full operational authority. No restrictions, no oversight, no rules except the ones we choose to follow." The silence that followed was deafening. "Full operational authority?" Admiral Crixon repeated slowly. Dr. Minji stepped forward with her datapad. "The hegemony leadership structure follows predictable patterns. We can end this conflict permanently, but only if we are allowed to prosecute the war effectively." "What does that mean exactly?" demanded General Vexty. Captain Hwan answered. "It means we fight to win, not to make a statement. It means we use every advantage we have. It means the enemy learns to fear the consequences of their actions." "This sounds like revenge, not justice," another officer protested. General Do-hyun's expression didn't change. "Justice is what happens after the war ends. While it continues, the only moral choice is to end it as quickly as possible." The debate that followed was shorter than before. The images of burning civilian colonies were fresh in everyone's mind. The vote was unanimous. "Human forces are granted full operational authority," Admiral Crixon announced. "God help us all." "Commander Veltar," General Do-hyun said as the council dispersed, "would you like to observe our operations? You might find them educational." Veltar agreed, though something in the general's tone made him nervous. The human staging area was unlike any military installation Veltar had seen. Where coalition bases were orderly and ceremonial, the human base felt like a machine designed for one purpose. Every movement had meaning. Every piece of equipment had a function. "Welcome to the war," Captain Hwan said, leading Veltar through corridors filled with human soldiers. They moved with the same purposeful efficiency as everything else in the base. Veltar noticed that the humans had modified their coalition equipment. Weapons that were designed for precision had been altered for power. Armor that was built for protection had been changed for mobility. Your people have made many modifications, Veltar observed. Standard procedure, Juan replied. We adapt equipment to match our tactics instead of adapting our tactics to match equipment. They entered a command center where Dr. Minji was working with a team of analysts. Screens covered the walls, showing real-time intelligence from across hegemony space. Status report, General Do-hyun requested as he joined them. All targets identified and confirmed, Dr. Minji replied. Strike teams are in position. Psychological warfare operations are ready to commence. Psychological warfare? Veltar asked. The hegemony thinks they understand fear, Dr. Minji explained. We are going to teach them they are wrong. The first phase began at midnight, coalition time. Veltar watched from the command center as human teams struck 17 hegemony installations simultaneously. But these weren't the quick, clean strikes the coalition was used to. The humans had studied each target for weeks. They knew guard rotations, supply schedules, and command structures. More importantly, they knew how to cause maximum psychological impact. Instead of destroying the bases outright, they infiltrated them. They disabled security systems, eliminated guards silently, and planted explosives throughout the facilities. Then they sent a message to Hegemony Command telling them exactly what they had done and exactly when the explosives would detonate. The Hegemony had 30 minutes to evacuate their people. Why give them warning? Veltar asked. Because dead enemies can't spread fear, Captain Juan replied. Survivors can. Veltar watched the timer count down. Exactly 30 minutes after, the warning was sent. All 17 installations exploded simultaneously. The humans had kept their word precisely. But that was only the beginning. Over the next week, human forces demonstrated capabilities that left Veltar stunned. They infiltrated supposedly secure facilities using techniques no one had imagined. They turned the hegemony's own communication systems against them. They appeared where they couldn't possibly be and vanished before anyone could respond. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to enjoy it. Veltar accompanied a human strike team, led by Commander Young-soo, to observe their methods firsthand. The target was a hegemony intelligence facility built into an asteroid field. How do we approach without being detected? Veltar asked as they studied the tactical display. Commander Young-soo smiled. We don't avoid detection. We make them think they're detecting something else. The plan was insane by coalition standards. Instead of sneaking past the defenses, the humans disguised their assault ships as damaged freighters. They broadcast distress signals and requested emergency docking. They will never believe this, Veltar protested. They will believe it because they want to believe it, Commander Young-soo replied. Everyone wants to capture human prisoners for interrogation. He was right. The hegemony facility granted emergency docking permission and even sent security teams to rescue the crew. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of human efficiency. The security teams were neutralized in minutes without raising an alarm. The facility's systems were compromised from within. By the time the base commander realized what was happening, human forces controlled everything that mattered. But instead of destroying the facility, Commander Young-soo did something that chilled Veltar to his core. He gave the base commander a choice. You can evacuate your people and we will destroy this facility, Young-soo said calmly. Or you can stay and we will destroy it anyway. But if you stay, we will make sure the hegemony leadership knows you chose to sacrifice your crew for no strategic advantage. The base commander chose evacuation. As they returned to coalition space, Veltar couldn't shake the feeling that he had witnessed something fundamental shift in the nature of warfare. The humans hadn't just won a tactical victory. They had made the enemy question their own judgment. Commander, he said to Young-soo, your people fight unlike anyone I have ever seen. We fight to win, Young-soo replied simply. Everything else is just details. That night, Veltar received a message from coalition intelligence. Hegemony forces were retreating from 3 star systems. Their military leadership was requesting another ceasefire. Some of their commanders were refusing orders to attack civilian targets. The humans had accomplished in 1 week what the coalition couldn't do in 15 years of conventional warfare, and Veltar was beginning to understand why their military records had been classified. Veltar spent his nights reading human military history. The coalition had finally declassified some files after seeing human effectiveness in action. What he read kept him awake. Humans had fought continuously for thousands of years, not the ritualized conflicts between star systems that galactic civilization knew, but total wars that consumed entire societies. They had developed weapons that could kill millions in minutes. They had fought battles where more soldiers died in a single day than most galactic wars lost in decades, and they had kept fighting. "Commander," Dr. Minji said, finding him in the ship's library. "Captain Huan mentioned you were researching our history." "I am trying to understand your people," Veltar replied. "These records, are they accurate?" Dr. Minji sat across from him. "Which ones concern you?" Veltar activated the display screen. "This says humans once fought a war that killed over 60 million of your own species. In 6 years. The Second World War. Yes, that's accurate. How is that possible? How did your civilization survive?" Dr. Minji was quiet for a moment. "Commander, what do you know about Earth's history?" "Basic information. Single planet, harsh conditions, relatively young species. Earth tried to kill us for 3 million years, Dr. Minji said. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues, predators, starvation. We survived because we learned to never give up. When something tries to destroy us, we destroy it first. But these wars were between humans. Yes, we are very good at learning from our enemies, sometimes too good." She activated another display. "This is why we classify our military records. Other species see our history and assume we are naturally violent. They don't understand that we learned violence from necessity." The new display showed Earth's evolutionary tree. Veltar studied the progression of human ancestors, noting how they had survived while other species went extinct. "Persistence hunting," Dr. Minji explained. "While other predators killed with strength or speed, humans killed with endurance. We would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We never gave up. And this applies to warfare. Everything humans do, we do until it is finished. We don't understand the concept of acceptable losses the way your people do. To us, any loss is unacceptable unless it prevents greater loss." That afternoon, Veltar joined another human operation. This time, he was assigned to a unit led by Sergeant Dongwon, a human who had volunteered to stay behind on dangerous missions multiple times. "Why do your people take such risks?" Veltar asked as they prepared for deployment. Sergeant Dongwon checked his equipment with practiced efficiency. "Because if we don't, someone else will have to. Maybe someone who won't come back." The mission was to rescue coalition prisoners from a hegemony detention facility. Intelligence indicated the facility held over 200 captives from various species. The tactical situation was hopeless by conventional standards. "The facility is built into a mountain," Commander Young-soo explained during the briefing. "Multiple defensive layers, redundant security systems, and garrison of over 3,000 hegemony troops. What is the plan?" Veltar asked. "We go in, get our people, and leave. That is not a plan. That is wishful thinking." Sergeant Dongwon looked at him seriously. "Commander, humans don't leave people behind ever. We will get them out or die trying." "And if you all die, what then?" "Then the next team will try, and the team after that, until everyone comes home." Veltar realized the human was completely serious. The assault began at dawn. Veltar expected the careful approach he had seen before, but the humans did something that shocked him. They announced their arrival. Commander Young-soo broadcast a message to the detention facility on all frequencies. "This is Coalition Liberation Force. We are here for our people. Surrender them now and you will not be harmed. Resist and you will be destroyed." The hegemony response was to open fire with every weapon they had. What followed was unlike any battle Veltar had ever witnessed. The humans didn't advance carefully or retreat when faced with overwhelming firepower. They adapted their tactics in real time, turning the enemy's advantages into disadvantages. When the hegemony used heavy artillery, the humans went underground. When the enemy tried to block their tunnels, the humans came from above. When the hegemony retreated to fortified positions, The humans surrounded them and waited. "This is taking too long," Veltar observed after 6 hours of combat. "Time doesn't matter," Sergeant Dongwon replied, treating a wounded soldier. "Results matter." Veltar watched the human medic work. The injured soldier was badly hurt, probably dying. By coalition standards, he would be evacuated and treated at a proper medical facility. Instead, the medic stayed with him on the battlefield, keeping him alive while the fighting continued around them. "Why not evacuate him?" Veltar asked. "Because he doesn't want to leave," the medic replied. "And because we might need him." The wounded soldier struggled to sit up. "Commander, status report." "We have 70% of the prisoners," Sergeant Dongwon reported. "Working on the rest." The soldier nodded and closed his eyes, but he didn't ask to be evacuated. The rescue operation took 18 hours. When it was over, all 200 prisoners had been freed. The hegemony garrison had surrendered after realizing that the humans would never stop coming. But the cost was high. 12 human soldiers died during the operation. 30 more were wounded. Veltar watched the humans load their casualties onto transport ships. They treated their dead with the same care as their living wounded. Every body was accounted for. Every name was recorded. "Your losses were significant," Veltar observed to Commander Youngsu. "Yes, they were. But the alternative was leaving 200 people to die in that place. The tactical value of the rescued prisoners does not justify the casualties, Commander." Youngsu looked at him with an expression Veltar couldn't read. "Commander, we didn't rescue those prisoners for tactical value. We rescued them because they were our people." That night, Veltar attended a memorial service for the fallen humans. He expected a brief ceremony, something formal and efficient like coalition military traditions. Instead, the humans talked about each soldier who had died. They shared stories about their lives, their families, their hopes. They celebrated their achievements and mourned their lost potential. But then they did something that chilled Veltar. They swore oaths. Every human present promised that their comrade's sacrifice would not be forgotten. They promised that the war would be won in their honor. "Commander," Sergeant Dongwon approached him after the service. "Thank you for being here. I did nothing. I only observed. Sometimes that is enough." Veltar studied the young human. "Sergeant, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Are you not afraid of dying?" Sergeant Dongwon was quiet for a moment. "I am terrified of dying, Commander. But I'm more afraid of living with the knowledge that I didn't do everything I could to protect others." The next morning brought news that changed everything. The hegemony had deployed a planet-killer weapon, a massive construction designed to crack planets apart and harvest their cores for energy. The target was Nexus Prime, a coalition world with over 2 billion inhabitants. Admiral Crixon called an emergency council meeting. When the human delegation arrived, they looked different. The calm confidence Veltar had grown used to was replaced by something harder. "The planet killer will reach Nexus Prime in 72 hours, Admiral Crixon announced. "Evacuation is impossible. The population is too large and we don't have enough ships." "Military options?" General Do-hyun asked. "None. The weapon is too heavily defended, and our fleets cannot reach it in time, General." Do-hyun exchanged looks with Dr. Minji and Captain Hwan. Something passed between them without words. "Admiral," General Do-hyun said slowly, "we may have a solution, but you will not like it. Explain." "We can stop the planet killer, but it will require us to use methods that violate every treaty, convention, and moral principle that galactic civilization holds dear." The silence that followed was absolute. "What kind of methods?" Admiral Crixon asked quietly. Dr. Minji activated her data pad. "The kind humans developed when we thought we might destroy ourselves." Veltar realized that humanity was about to reveal their final secret, the one that would change the galaxy forever. The human command ship looked different than it had before. Where once there had been modified coalition equipment, now Veltar saw weapons he didn't recognize, technologies that seemed to bend space itself, systems that hummed with barely contained energy. "Commander," Captain Hwan greeted him at the airlock. "Thank you for agreeing to observe." "The Admiral ordered me to witness whatever you're planning," Veltar replied. "He wants someone he trusts to report on human methods." Hwan's expression was grim. "What we are about to do will horrify you, Commander. It horrifies us too, but 2 billion lives hang in the balance." They walked through corridors filled with human soldiers preparing equipment Veltar had never seen before. These weren't the modified coalition weapons humans had used previously. These were purely human designs created for purposes he couldn't imagine. "What are these weapons?" Veltar asked. "Things we hoped we would never have to build," Juan replied. The command center was filled with activity. Dr. Minji worked at stations that seemed to monitor everything in surrounding space. General Do-hyun stood before a massive, tactical display showing the planet killers' approach to Nexus Prime. "Status report," the general requested as they entered. "Planet killer is 60 hours from target," an officer reported. "Hegemony fleet escort includes 40 capital ships and 300 support vessels. Our forces? 12 ships, including this one." Veltar stared at the display. 12 ships against that fleet? "This is suicide." General Do-hyun looked at him. "Commander, do you know why humans classify our military history?" Dr. Minji explained that other species might misunderstand your motivations. "That's part of it. But the real reason is that we discovered things about warfare that no civilization should know. We learned how to fight wars so terrible that they almost destroyed our entire species." Dr. Minji looked up from her console. "The weapons we developed during our worst conflicts were designed to end wars permanently. Not just win them, but make the cost of fighting so high that no one would ever want to fight again." "What kind of weapons?" General Do-hyun activated another display. What Veltar saw made his blood freeze. "Nuclear weapons," the general explained. "Biological weapons. Chemical weapons. Artificial plagues. Nanotechnology that consumes matter at the molecular level. Quantum bombs that delete portions of space-time itself. These are theoretical weapons," Veltar protested. "No, Commander. We built them. We used them. And we realized they were too dangerous for any species to possess." Dr. Minji's console chimed. "First phase deployment successful. Hegemony fleet is now infected." "Infected?" Veltar demanded. Captain Juan pulled up a molecular display. "We released self-replicating nanobots 3 hours ago. They are currently dismantling every electronic system in the Hegemony fleet from the inside." Veltar watched in horror as the tactical display showed Hegemony ships going dark one by one. Not destroyed, simply turned off. "This is biological warfare on a technological level," he whispered. "Yes. And it's just the beginning." Over the next 12 hours, Veltar witnessed humanity unleash weapons that redefined his understanding of what was possible. They didn't just defeat the Hegemony fleet. They systematically dismantled it using technologies that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Ships disappeared into artificially created black holes. Others were infected with viruses that turned their own weapons against them. The lucky ones simply lost power and drifted helplessly in space. But the planet killer itself was too heavily shielded and automated to be stopped by technological warfare. "Time for Phase 2. General Do-hyun announced. "What is Phase 2? Veltar asked, though he was afraid to know. "Something we swore we would never do again." Admiral Soo-young appeared on the communication screen. Her ship was approaching the planet killer from the opposite direction, moving at impossible speed. "Admiral," General Do-hyun said, "you understand the mission parameters." "Understood, General. It has been an honor serving with you." Veltar realized what was happening. "She is going to ram the planet killer?" "Not exactly," Dr. Minji replied. "She is going to detonate a quantum singularity bomb inside its core." "A what?" "A weapon that creates a controlled black hole. It will consume the planet killer from within, and her ship will be destroyed instantly." Veltar watched the tactical display in stunned silence. Admiral Soo-young's ship accelerated toward the planet killer, ignoring the defensive fire that tried to stop her. Other human ships moved to intercept enemy fighters, sacrificing themselves to clear her path. "Admiral," General Do-hyun said over the comm, "final confirmation of mission parameters." "I understand, General. Tell my family I love them." The Admiral's ship struck the planet killer's hull and disappeared inside. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to tear open. The planet killer collapsed inward, consumed by forces that shouldn't exist. The artificial black hole lasted exactly 17 seconds before it evaporated, leaving nothing behind except empty space. Nexus Prime was saved, but the cost was devastating. 8 human ships had been destroyed in the operation. Over 3,000 human lives lost to save 2 billion others. As the surviving ships limped back to Coalition space, Veltar found himself in the ship's medical bay. He wasn't injured, but he needed somewhere quiet to process what he had witnessed. Sergeant Dongwon found him there. "Commander, are you all right?" "Your people just deployed weapons that could destroy galaxies," Veltar said. "How are you not terrified of your own capabilities?" Sergeant Dongwon sat beside him. "We are terrified, Commander. Every day. That's why we classify these weapons. That's why we hope never to use them again." "But you built them anyway." "We built them because sometimes terrible choices are the only choices available." Veltar looked at the young human. "How do you live with that knowledge?" "By making sure we never forget the cost. Every time we use these weapons, we mourn. Every time we win through destruction, we remember what we destroyed. It keeps us human." The next day brought news that the hegemony had requested unconditional surrender. Their leadership had been shown recordings of the planet killer's destruction. They understood that humanity possessed weapons that could end their civilization in minutes. But instead of celebrating, the humans held memorial services for their fallen. They grieved for their enemies. They began planning reconstruction efforts for damaged worlds. "Commander," General Do-Yun approached Veltar as he prepared to return to Coalition Command. "What will you tell Admiral Crixon about our methods?" Veltar considered the question. "I will tell him that humanity saved 2 billion lives by making choices that would have destroyed the souls of any other species. And that the galaxy is safer because you exist, but only as long as you remain human." General Do-Hyun nodded slowly. "That is the burden we carry, Commander. The knowledge that we could become the very monsters we fight against." As Veltar's transport departed the human command ship, he looked back at the vessels that had just saved a world. They were battered, scarred, and filled with soldiers who had sacrificed everything for strangers they would never meet. He realized that humanity had shown the galaxy something more terrifying than their weapons. They had shown what it looked like when a species refused to accept defeat no matter the cost. The war was over, but Veltar suspected the galaxy would never be the same.